Yo, Mana Squad, if you like any of the cards you see in today's video, make sure to hit up the affiliate link down below to TCG Player. You can help look up some of your local game stores in the process and help show the channel some love. And you know you got to look good while you play in order to play good. So make sure you hit up our link to Into the AM as well. We have the discount code down in the description below. Look, you got to listen to Kenneth the Heathen. He always says something about dripping in space and screaming. We don't know what it means, but do what the man says. And last but not least, hit up Heavy Play. Heavy Play is going to have some of the nicest playmats and deck boxes out there. Their magnet system between their deck box and dice trays and playmat is amazing, especially if you're playing at like bars, restaurants, stuff like that. You got to get up and move. There is no better way to keep all your stuff together, and you can show the channel some love in the process. Stay petty.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Command Center. We'd like to put our favorite commander, maybe even yours, front and center. And you know we can't do it unless we play those three egregious letters, EDH. What does it stand for today, Hadoken?
It stands for Examining Deck Heuristics. That's right. We are fresh from where ice was discovered. Chicago. Dear God, at one point I thought the wind was alive. I tried to hide behind a corner, but it literally peeked around the corner, tapped me on the shoulder, like, where you going? You go eat your cornbread. Oh, but speaking of which, we talking about brackets. And you know the first thing I think about brackets, March Madness. That's right. We talking about yay sports ball. I got Duke taking it all. Wait, what are we doing?
The funny thing is when we asked, we got to Chicago last week. One of the first questions we asked Ken was how do you feel about brackets? Like, and he was like genuinely was just like, you mean like sports brackets? So we got like real time feedback and just enlightenment from Ken in the moment, learning what brackets were. I think he knew what they were, read them the first time, decided this is not going to help me. I don't like this. They're calling me out. I feel seen, and then forgot that he read it and had to be reminded again.
I read the brackets like I read most Magic cards. After the first two sentences, I kind of give up.
You would have thought he was looking at you would have thought he was looking at like a horoscope or something. Like he's like, this does not apply to does not apply to me at all.
This is not mine. This is not for me. But yeah, so we want to talk about brackets today from a few different perspectives. Like I think at this point, everyone has gone on some sort of rant and speech about brackets from a whole bunch of different perspectives. One, we want to talk about it from the land of petty and the land of jank, because I think we kind of have a unique perspective on the lower end of these brackets, especially the ones and twos, as opposed to, I think, the average kind of group you'll see at an LGS, which are, man, more and more I go out, the more scared I get, because threes are about the nicest decks I've seen sometimes when I go out in the wild. And also talk about our experience in Chicago with this, because we actually got to be out in the wild, meet a whole bunch of y'all, play a bunch of random games. I guess a bunch is relative. Some of us got to play a bunch of games and see if the system worked at all. Was it used? Was it just passed by? And that's like the first kind of big data point we have for this. So yeah, we can jump into this. Before I'm going to go ahead and kind of read, there's a bracket diagram, and this one specifically was shared by Rachel Weeks, where there's like added context and things like that. Before I dive into the brackets themselves, did y'all have any thoughts about kind of kicking it off? Anything about the concept of this as a whole?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this. This is about a bracket in general. I saw a bracket that said it had Captain America taking Cyclops. Look here. All right, I respect Captain America, the shield, stars and stripes, all that good stuff. But Scott Summers would work the ever-living bejesus out of Captain America. He is one of the best fighters in the Marvel universe, bar none. He will catch them hands and them feet. Them hands are ready to eat for everybody. Come to me, my X-Men. Wait, sorry, what are we talking about again?
Was that from the Aquaman movie? So what I'm gonna do?
Flights to Arizona.
It's the only way I can get your ass to fly out here. I just gotta start talking bad about Marvel more. So one thing, I guess, before we jump much farther, also shout out to everybody that came to see us in Chicago. That was crazy. That was super fun. Appreciate y'all taking time out of your convention time to come see us. We did our first meet and greet, and it was more than just our mom standing in line over and over to tell us we did good. So thank you for that. That was that was awesome.
You a big boy, ain't you? You's a big boy. And in all honesty, you know, we wasn't even expecting nobody to come to the line. We was expecting to play commander while everybody else was just standing in line. As a matter of fact, we were going to be the Shivam line part 2. We like, just come over here, get in line. We got plenty of room over here, plenty of space. We got water and cupcakes and everything, and we can sit over here and throw tables randomly. But then they was like, hey, aren't you the guy who created the McRib? And I was like, thank you. Finally, I get the respect that I deserve, okay? I also created the horsey sauce and also told them to make the chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A spicy.
I like ours just being Shivam Overflow, where it's just like we write his name as best as we can, but poorly because they didn't have enough time to get him to sign stuff. So we all 3 are doing separate Shivam signatures to accommodate. No, it was crazy. It was awesome seeing everybody. Got lots of pictures. Yeah, if y'all have pictures, tag us. We don't take pictures of ourselves. So if any of y'all did get pictures shared anywhere, tag us. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're on social media, different places.
We don't take
you
pictures.
said what?
We don't take pictures. That's evidence.
Yeah, we've gotten like 3 total pictures in I don't know how many years of conventions. All right, let's jump into brackets then. So the bracket system has broken down into 5 different brackets for effectively bracketing your commander deck. Not power level isn't the right word, but really finding the vibe of your deck is, I think, the best way to describe the bracket system and trying to figure out where your deck fits. So in bracket 1, they call it the exhibition bracket. This is just, I want to show off a casual theme for my deck. These are prioritizing theme over function. They have a goal outside of winning. That's the biggest thing about these, is winning is not at all what the goal of the deck is. You might want to show support for an under-supported mechanic, a favorite artist, flavor text. It could be anything that you want to do. It's just you're not building around like an established mechanic, and you're not building towards a win. If your deck does its thing, yeah, the winning is not the end result. You got no game changers in here, and we'll get more into game changers in a second. There's no mass land denial of any kind, not just destruction, denial. No extra turns, no 2-card combos, and very few tutors. The reason I'm excited, and we'll keep going, but we're going to circle back to this, and this is what I'm excited to talk about. Now, in bracket 2, this is the core gameplay. You want a relaxed game with a satisfying ending. The decks are focused and functional, but contain suboptimal cards and strategies, and basically like a modern precon, the average modern precon. Wins are telegraphed, incremental. You can still have explosive turns, but it's not going to be super early in the game. And you have the same deal with no game changers, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns. So you can have isolated ones, no 2-card combos, and still very few tutors. So this is a step up, like modern day precons, having a goal for your deck more so. Now in bracket 3, we have upgraded. These are, you want strong cards, you're ready for battle. They're thoughtfully designed, powered up by synergy, additional card quality, and players may expect the game to end out of nowhere with powerful spells or combos. You can have 0 to 3 game changers, which again we'll get into, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, and then 4 and 5 are types of Magic that we don't play. That's scary things. Things go boom, lots of cards at the table, way too much math is done, and typically we run away, flipping tables into the night when 4s and 5s come out. It's not for us. So that's 4 and 5 are essentially, 4 is high power, non-meta. CEDH is bracket 5, which is meta high power, where you're building not only the most powerful decks, but it's for the meta of CEDH. Whereas 4, you're building the most powerful decks outside of that meta, just basically doing whatever you want. There's no restrictions on either of those. It's all about just power, and chaos. And for some people, that's the most fun thing ever. For me, that's a headache. Ken, you look like you got some thoughts already. You look like you are.
I'm about to make it super simple for everybody, okay? This is the easiest breakdown, and see if you can back me up on this. All right, level 1, Farmer with a Gun and Radix from Dragon Ball Z. All right, that's level 1. All right, level 2, we get to the androids and maybe even the Cell games. That's level 2. No. Level 2 is the Ginyu Force. Level 2 is the Ginyu Force, and we may get some level 1 Frieza in that action. All right, level 3 is where we hit the Cell games. Okay, Perfect Cell is where we're at right now. All right. Level 4, we've hit Boo territory, and I'm talking about Mad Boo. All right, level 5 is Destroyer God. We're at Beerus' house right now. Say, you smell what I'm stepping in?
I see what you're doing. I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm pretty sure there were some, Dragon Ball wishes, used along the way to get up these, get up the core of these brackets here. So, I'm a little positive on the brackets from what I've seen so far. So, I somewhat agree with them. I think maybe there could be a 0, but don't have to stretch it for too much. But I think 1 is fine. I did see some people trying to kind of confuse between 4 optimized and CEDH, trying to figure out what the difference is between that. But come on, guys, you know the difference. You know the difference. Yeah. If you're playing CEDH, there's literally, you're playing CEDH.
Yeah, I heard of. No, I was gonna say I saw quotes everywhere basically saying if you have to ask if your deck is CEDH, it's not CEDH. That's just that's the answer right there. It is. If you're playing CEDH, you know it. It is a very meta-specific way to play Magic. Sorry, Ken, you can take it over.
The biggest difference between number 4 and CEDH is $1,500. Let me tell you right there. Okay, it's actually a monetary value associated with that. I'm not talking about card designs. I'm not talking about artist proofs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just straight Limp Biscuit cards, which by the way is a disgusting concept. If you actually look it up, don't look it up. But yeah, the nitty gritty card value is the difference is about $1,500. So no, you're not paying the CEDH deck if you can get a McDonald's combo meal for your deck.
I don't agree with that actually. I do think optimized decks are just as expensive. Literally the only difference between optimized and CEDH in my mind is what commanders you're choosing and what strategies you're winning with. So if you have an optimized, pick a random commander, like the Locust God is a good example. That is not a CEDH deck. But if you can make
all the whales
$30,000 Locust God deck with the most powerful cards possible. That's optimized. That goes into 4 because it's not in the meta. That's not a tier 1, 2, or 3 CEDH deck. So you're still using all the same expensive mana rocks, lands, all that. The only difference is specific commander and strategy is not a meta way to win, so you're not going to be able to win and compete with a Timna Thrasios Thoracle type deal or whatever it is. Like that's kind of where that difference is. So that's why even in 4 you have that mass land destruction. You have all of those things. You could be running a Tabernacle in that 4. That's perfectly fine. You could be running Tabernacle Cradle with the Sarah Sanctum and all that. And all of that is to be expected. It's just you don't have the meta win conditions, so you're putting yourself at a quote-unquote disadvantage. Now, one of the interesting parts about this, Ken, that does tie into what you said is the way this was built is that you should be able to play with decks immediately to the left or right of your bracket. So if you're a bracket 4, you should be able to play with bracket 5 decks. So that kind of ties in with all that. But at the same time, if you're the 1-4 in a pod of 3, some maybe like high-end 3s, it also should still be a game. It's not going to feel like you're playing 2 different sports completely. So that's something that we can kind of keep in mind. But we're not going to talk too much about 4s and 5s just because we don't really play that kind of Magic. Even just at base level, by definition, I don't think any of our decks even approach a 4 or a 5. We don't run any. I've never seen any of us chain extra turns. Well, no, you are actually right. Ken actually does have some decks that fall into the 4 category, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But Ken actually does.
I have a couple too. Sometimes I take the weights off, like Rock Lee. I got to run around a track.
Technically, my decks are 3.5s.
No, it's very clear cut as far as the mass land, and we'll get into this in a second. So let's real quick before we get into the specifics. I mentioned game changers a whole bunch. We've not talked to any about what the individual game changers are. So game changers, there's a whole bunch. There's 40 to be exact. I'm going to put this graphic up on the screen. Me reading them, I don't think is going to do anybody any good. By the time I get to like the 10th one, you're going to forget the first one. So this graphic will be on the screen. We'll link the article from Wizards in the description as well, just to make things easier. So you can go and just look at them at your leisure. It's a lot of tutors, super powerful cards, everything from stuff people have been asking bans for, like Smothering Tithe and Rhystic Study, to just raw power that just takes over a game like a Vorinclex or a Tergrid, and everything from that to fast mana like Mana Vaults, Mox Diamonds, that type of stuff. So stuff all over the place. in all different aspects. And I love this game changer list. This is all a first draft. We'll get into our thoughts on the specifics of it, but I think it does a great job. But that's basically what these game changers are. You have all these cards to look at that effectively is working like a point system. Very similar to Canadian Highlander in that if you're 1 and 2, you can't have any points. If you're 3, you can have up to 3 points, so you can select up to 3. And if you're 4 and 5, have all the points in the world. You can do whatever you want. So it is that kind of like hybrid between a point system and a pseudo ban list that I find really interesting. What I want to do though is go bracket by bracket, especially because I think we offer some unique perspective for some of these. So especially starting with 1. One thing I've seen very commonly talked about is most people have never seen a 1, have never played against a 1, and have definitely never built a 1. These are probably the least common. I think you'll probably see more CDH decks than you will see 1s out in the wild, and that people that have these decks. But fortunately, and we can also, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of links in the description here. We've had a bunch of jank offs with the professor, and we also played a lot of Magic. And part of that was that we got to play jank decks and build jank decks where the purpose was not to win games. So I think we've done multiple. Yeah, we've had multiple jank offs at this point. And we could talk about those decks and building, because that to me is the most interesting part of a 1 is it's not just the choices you're making. It's a whole different mindset in building the deck. Like maybe this is how CDH player feels when they build decks, but it felt like I was playing a different game building those decks. So if we each want to talk about some of the jank decks we built for Shuffle Up and Play, that's probably the best examples we can give. I've been talking too much. I'm going to throw it over to you, Say, because you have had 1 jank off so far. So you can kind of start with the 1 deck that you played and kind of what that process was like.
Yeah, so during that time, I just had to remind myself what that game was. I looked it up, and that was my Yannette deck. Essentially, that can be a high-powered deck. If we were using today's lingo, probably sitting somewhere around a 3. It could potentially maybe be brought up to a 4, but it's a 5 CMC Esper Commander Sphinx that when it attacks, that essentially if the top card of your library is an odd CMC spell, you can cast it for free. So the way that I played it during the jank off was that I didn't manipulate my deck at all. Whatever was on top was on top. I even had a number of even number spells in there that I thought would just be funny for the game. So it wasn't trying to actually do what the commander said. I don't even think I got a chance to cast my commander that game. I just remember the deck failing miserably and it achieved nothing. So I guess it succeeded at being a 1.
Well, the one point you made that I think really stood out to me was making decisions that were objectively bad for your deck, but you thought would be funny for the game. As far as putting those random even spells in, like that, I think is the most telltale sign of a 1 is that it's telling a story, but it's objectively like that is the story you want that game to be, but it's objectively like not helping you win at all.
Yeah, because like even Conundrum Sphinx is a Sphinx that fits the motif of the deck. And the deck itself was like head games. Like I'm just gonna, Ken hates this. We play sub games, but like I'm gonna make you guess something, gonna make you choose something, gonna make you sort something, stuff like that. And so some Sphinxes are even number, but hey, I threw it in there because I like what the Sphinx was doing for the deck.
I know every time they print a Sphinx, you just gonna find a way to squeeze it in, but okay.
Yep. Petra Sphinx might have made the cut. That's the really bad Sphinx. Even though it's an odd CMC, it's like a white Sphinx that has very low power, doesn't even fly. It's really bad. Don't play Petra Sphinx.
How do you not fly as a Sphinx? Isn't that your whole thing? I feel like Sphinxes are known for 2 things, and it's like Ken alluded to, not being very good in flying. I don't know what else. You can't achieve one of those. Yeah. Okay. Well, Ken, what about you? You've had 2 jank decks on Shuffle Up that we've gone ahead and built. You could talk about both of them, one of them. What stood out to you about that building process for jank? Because especially of the 3 of us, I know you like to play some of your spice. So what was your mindset in effectively going into the game, knowing in this case you had to build a 1?
Let me stop you right there. I know exactly what he was thinking. I want to bring up the game that I played in because I wasn't there for the second one. But the first one, this is the one with the clear sleeves, and I think with the upside down cards, double face cards. I think that was the game. Maybe it wasn't. But I definitely remember that you were playing enchantments that were trying to make us lose or make you lose, but you were going to pass them off. You were trying to play a 1, but you was really playing a 3. I just want to throw that out there.
That's the most Ken thing possible, to show up to a jank off with like a loaded cannon, just being like, yeah.
First of all,
you thought we were playing jank.
First of all, it was a
I'm
glass
playing my
cannon,
regular ass deck.
It was a glass cannon, and I could have died at any point in that match. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna be honest. When I played half of those enchantments, I had nothing to get rid of them. As a matter of fact, they were literally desperation. I'm playing these because they were literally about to kill me. So you know what? They were a 1, said, because 6 times out of 10, they were gonna kill me. So I believe that that's what makes it a 1. I had no plan in winning any games.
So he says.
See. Yeah, exactly. Or so he says. So for my deck, the first one I played on Shuffle Up was Lady Orca. I think that might fit the best into the 1 category, in the sense of it didn't have any, at least in the deck that you mentioned, Ken, that has a win con. There is like a definitive, like, this can win through this. I can do this. Said, you kind of mentioned that, you know, inherently your commander had some power and potentially you could get lucky. Lady Orca's the worst commander I've ever played. The deck was great, but it was based on flavor text, and that's where I think a different, because like said, you talked about, from your aspect, you added cards in that would be fun for the game that were bad. That is one stuff. Ken, I don't know what you were thinking. You were building a 3 and trying to hurt all of her feelings. Don't know what you're trying to do there. But for Lady Orca, it's a vanilla legendary creature. So I had built the deck exclusively around its flavor text, because it sounded like Lady Orca had really stank breath in the flavor text. So I made sure everything in the deck had to have fire breathing for the stank breath. So every creature had to have fire breathing. All the enchantments gave fire breathing. That was the only thing the deck did. It just barely functioned as a Magic deck, and I think that kind of fits in with this 1 category, in that, yeah, it technically had ramp. It had some way to draw cards. I only included card draw that was like impulse draw, because it had to be coming from like the fire stank breath of like, whoo, breathing fire, and then the cards disappear. Like, everything had to be on theme, regardless of the levels of effectiveness or not. Like, it could not function against people playing normal decks. So I think all 3 of those are really good examples, and the mindset, like we talked about going in, is you know it when you're building it. You don't accidentally build a 1. And I think that's the main takeaway, is that you can't if you're sitting there and building a deck with any sort of like purpose and planning, and you're looking at the curve in this, you can't just, oh, this is a 1. So if you sit at a table and you have a deck that you've worked on with a purpose of saying, oh, I want this to do this to win this way, it's not a 1. It doesn't matter if you have no game changers, no nothing, no anything else. If there is a purpose to deck building beyond, I love the flavor text, or I want to make people laugh, then it kind of outgrows this category. Said, I want to get more of your thoughts, because you mentioned the presence of a 0, potentially, like if that was a thing. I feel like 1 does a good job of describing that lowest level of deck building. Where would you differentiate this kind of what we're describing as a 1 from a potential 0?
Not really much. I just teased the idea of a 1 just to, a 0 just to be different. That like I think that jank can win. There can be a method to the madness. It actually made me think about the psychometrics, like, jank versus spike versus the others, Timmy and whatnot. Like, for a second, it almost made me feel like that they were putting these up on a hierarchy as far as like putting jank at the bottom. And I do think that jank can get there, can have the goal of winning. It's just, like I said, a method to the madness that doesn't always seem obvious. And I would just put the 0 as being like, I just got a new collection of cards. I just started playing Magic. My brother just passed me down these colors, and I just put them together. This is my new Magic deck. This is my starter. This is where I'm starting at. So kind of like when I started Magic, just kind of gathering cards from the box that people were kind of throwing away their free cards after their Friday Night Magics, and that's kind of how I acquired some of my cards. And yeah, I would just equate that as a 0. Like, there's no absolutely strategy to it. It's just going in with what you got.
So actually, I can actually tag in on this one too because I know what you mean. For example, I got a friend named Alex who builds, like, I would think they're not really powerful decks, and I would put them in that same category. For example, he has a hats deck, and basically all the cards in his deck have to have hats in the picture. By the way, a halo is not a hat. I will fight you on that every single day of the week. But he has a deck specifically for hats. He also has a Christmas deck that has nothing but Christmas themed items in the deck. It's not meant to be a win. It's just literally for the fun of the deck, so he can play the cards and be like, I play this card, it has a hat. I play this card, it also has a hat. And then for example, like Kyle plays it, I have a friend also that we've met, and we've all met him before at Gen Con specifically. He has a food deck, and all he wants to do is let the chef cook. Because when he creates a food, he has many tokens that are food tokens that he can display and put them on display and show them, and it makes the game fun. So if there are people who just have they shine, their personality shines through their decks, and that's the whole motif of it. Or people who build themed decks, like I want to build a Dune deck, so I got worms, I got this, I got that. It's not designed to win; it's designed to tell a story.